There are moments I return to, not because I want to relive them, but because they still live in me. That rainy Wednesday, when the sky wept as if it knew something I didn't yet understand, you looked at me like the storm had no hold on your heart. I was unraveling in silence, in glances I thought you didn't catch, but you did. You always did. You noticed the way my hands trembled around a teacup, the way my voice faltered on the edge of joy, and you didn't flinch. You didn't run. You stayed with the quiet things I tried to hide, wrapping them in the comfort of your stillness, and somehow that meant everything. You taught me love doesn't need loud declarations or grand entrances. It's in the way someone stays when they're not required to, when everything is inconvenient, messy, and raw, yet they choose to stay. And you did. That's the part I keep coming back to. Not the beginning, not the fall, but the way you stayed when I couldn't. Even now, I trace my memories back to you like following the lines on my palm. They always curve toward fate. I used to think love was a sudden strike, a thunderclap in the chest. But with you, it was quieter. A slow kindling, a hush before the sunrise. There was no grand confession, no pivotal moment, but rather a series of little ones, a laugh shared in the kitchen when I spilled the milk, a glance across the room when you knew I needed grounding, a hand on my back as we passed through crowds, not possessive but protective, love in the smallest of gestures. And while the world spins with noise and the rush of people searching for something dazzling, I found myself in your simplicity, in the calm you carried, in the steadiness of your breath next to mine at 2 a.m. You didn't just love me, you understood me, and that felt rarer than any vow. Perhaps that's why even now, long after time should have faded it, I still feel you beside me. I never told you how scared I was, of how fragile I felt in your hands, like a glass sculpture pretending to be strong. I used to build walls not to keep people out, but to see who'd try to climb them. You didn't climb, you sat outside, waiting. You brought flowers instead of ladders, silence instead of pressure. You showed me that love could be patient, that it didn't need to break through to be real. It could wait until the gates unlocked themselves. And when I finally let you in, you didn't rush to fill the space. You walked carefully, respectfully, as if every piece of me mattered. You asked, "Are you sure?" more times than I'd ever heard in my life. And I was never more sure of anything than of you. Maybe that's why your leaving never felt like abandonment, because your presence had already become part of me. It wasn't about where you were, but what you'd left behind. You stayed in ways that distance couldn't take away. Some nights I hear your voice in the echo of old songs, not the lyrics, but the hush between verses. That's where you lived, in the quiet, the subtle, the overlooked. I learned to listen differently with you, not for what was said, but for what was meant. And I wonder, did you know you were teaching me that you were shifting the entire way I loved? Before you, I chased fireworks. I mistook chaos for passion, confusion for depth. But you were a lighthouse, a rhythm I could lean into. And now, in a world that moves too fast, I still pause at 3 p.m. just to remember the way your coffee tasted, the way your hands curled around books you never finished but always started. You stayed not in the story's end, but in the middle, in the pauses, the waiting, the effort to try again. And I keep those memories like worn pages in a journal. The story of how someone loved me without needing to fix me. I remember one winter when everything was cold, inside and out. I had lost myself in the routine of surviving, forgetting that living meant more than breathing. I was shadows and apologies, constantly shrinking. And you lit candles without asking. You didn't tell me to be better. You told me I was enough. Right then, right there. Your arms didn't feel like rescue, they felt like return. As if I had known you before I knew myself. I was a song you already memorized, a rhythm you never missed. And it wasn't that you saved me, it's that you reminded me I was never lost. You stayed through the frost, through the days I wouldn't speak, through the ones where I couldn't stop crying. You held me when I didn't deserve it, especially then. Love isn't about being easy to love, it's about staying when love feels hard. And you, my love, made it feel like staying was your favorite part of the story. I often wonder if time regrets moving on without us, if the days missed the way we lived in them. Do you remember the yellow of that old armchair? The one we argued over buying, then ended up napping in together for hours. Do you remember how we made dinner like it was a dance, no music needed, just clinking pans and laughter? Those aren't just memories to me, they're proof. Proof that love doesn't need a stage, that it grows best in the mundane. I loved you in 100 daily ways, in packed lunches and socks found for you when you were late, in the soft good nights even after hard days. And maybe that's what hurts most, that the world doesn't celebrate the kind of love we had, the one built on loyalty, on choice, on staying. But I do. I carry it like a secret medal, because in all the chaos of life, you stayed when you didn't have to. And that has always been the rarest kind of love. There were days I didn't know how to speak. Words felt too sharp or too soft, and I worried they'd either cut or be unheard. But you had this uncanny ability to read silence. You never asked me to perform my pain. You didn't need the full explanation to offer your hand. And in that you taught me something beautiful, that love isn't earned, it's given, freely, bravely, without an agenda. You gave it like breath, instinctive and vital. You made loving look easy, not because I was easy to love, but because you chose it again and again. You stayed not because I was your obligation, but because I was your joy, and I felt that. I feel it still, in the quiet between my steps, in the way I look at the sky, in the patience I've learned to give others. You stayed, and that became a map I follow even now, a map of how to love without conditions, how to stay, even when it's easier to walk away. I don't talk about you much anymore, not because I've forgotten, but because the world doesn't always know what to do with a story that didn't end in goodbye. You and I, we were more than that. We were the kind of love that never unthreads, even when life tries to pull at the seams. I still feel you in my mornings, in the way I stir my tea, in how I take longer walks now, more present than before. You left behind not a void, but a garden, and every time I catch myself smiling at nothing, I know it's because of you. You were the proof that love can be soft, and that softness is strength. You didn't ask me to be anything I wasn't. You simply asked to be there with me, and so you stayed. Through storms, through silence, through slow days. You stayed the way the ocean does, constant, deep, unshakable, and I suppose that's what I'll always remember. Not just that you loved me, but the way you stayed. I used to think staying was simple, that it meant being there physically, but I've learnt now, it's much more than that. It's in the attentiveness, in the noticing, in asking how are you really, and staying for the answer. You stayed for every version of me, messy, unsure, undone, and in doing so, you gave me the space to become, to grow into someone who believes in gentleness again. I didn't always believe in forever, but with you I believed in the moment, and that was enough. I believed in the way you held space for my dreams, even the ones I was too scared to speak aloud. You believed in them for me. You stayed when my voice shook, when my vision blurred, when the world felt too loud. And so now, when I meet others, when I love, I try to stay the way you did, with presence, with patience, with grace. You taught me how, and maybe that's the greatest thing love can leave behind, a lesson that lives on. I often dream of us in the in-between, not quite past, not quite future, just existing, in the softness of shared time. I see us walking again, nowhere special, hands brushing, words optional, the kind of peace that doesn't ask for anything but your nearness. In those dreams there's no heartbreak, only presence, only the echo of how love once held me so completely. I wake up grateful, not sad, because what we had was real, and what's real never truly goes. You stayed long enough to change the rhythm of my soul, long enough to make me believe again, and that belief that love should feel like safety, like truth, like home, that's what I carry. Not the pain, not the loss, but the way you stayed, and in the quietest part of me, I still thank you, for every second, for every still morning, for the gift of a love that didn't shout but whispered through the walls of my heart, and never left.